everyone in my family, food is 100% a passion. So, I mean, and I have like really fond memories of big family dinners and my Uncle Hector at the head of the table, or, like being in my grandmother's kitchen. Everyone in my family cooks, even if it's not a profession, it's a passion. So my Uncle Hector had this idea to start Chef Boyardee, and they started in 1928. And the idea to start the company really was sparked by owning a restaurant and having people be really interested in their food. It was really organic in terms of, their patrons would ask them, "Oh, can I bring a little pasta home? And how do I cook it? And could I bring a little tomato sauce home? Or how could I make this at home?" And just from having all of those conversations and those requests, they had this idea like, well, what about if we started selling our pasta sauce in the restaurant? And they started, in old recycled milk bottles, selling tomato sauce. And one of their customers was a truck driver. They said, "Hey, while you're driving across the country, if we gave you some samples, would you pass it out and see if people like it?" And he was like, "Absolutely." And then he would come back with, tales of how much everybody loved their sauce. And they thought, wow, we really have something here. This could be a viable idea. This could be a viable business. There were three brothers that were partners in Chef Boyardee. One was my grandfather, my Uncle Hector, and my Uncle Paul, who was their older brother. And the three of them pooled their resources and started this business in 1928. From what I remember, my dad, was saying is that Milton was a town that was sort of like on the cusp of changing anyway. It was sort of, I think it was more of like a steel town, and it was just, the economy was slowing, and they came in and kind of like revived the area and, injected a lot of life into farming and job creation. Factory is really important. It's really important to, just to like the heritage and the spirit of the brand, to maintain that piece is important.
My name is George Vinios. I'm the executive director of the Time organization, which oversees the Chef's Place Boiardi Museum and Eatery. The Time organization is Milton's revitalization organization, the Main Street program. And so it's been on our community's minds for decades, wanting to do some kind of a museum somewhere, somehow, to recognize Hector Boiardi, probably one of Milton's most famous residents ever. And so this opportunity came up. The space was donated by the Moose Lodge. It was an abandoned banquet room. And so we came in and we did a major renovation with a lot of volunteer work. We raised money, and we opened several years ago. And it's event space for different things, cooking classes. It's for typical banquet type events, but and so on. The Boiardi family, again, they were here for decades, and to this day, their nephew Paul, who couldn't be here, but he comes up here and he gets a hoot out of just being the host and show people around and tell stories and do interviews. Milton always was always an industrial blue collar community, and that's where we got our name, Milltown. So there were many factory workers here. What actually the biggest appeal to him to come here was the farms and the abilities to grow tomatoes and the location of the Susquehanna River, because they had to place the plant as close as it could to fresh water for processing.
I think the last time I was in Milton was probably 2 or 3 years ago. We certainly still feel a connection to Milton, for sure. My aunt and uncle actually live not that far from there. They live actually on Boiardi Lane. My brother and I, and like local friends, we would just run around, like run through the fields, and like I loved being there. Yeah, my dad would take us by there all the time, and I had met people when I was a kid that had actually worked with my grandfather, which I think is like pretty astonishing. How many certain people had been there for 40 plus years. And I think it's a place that certainly has a lot of importance to the community. And it was really kind of like out of context because my Uncle Hector was my Uncle Hector. And, we didn't even have a sense of how familiar most Americans were with the brand and how popular the brand was. It's just when you grow up in a family, your family is your family. That's it. But my grandfather died before I was born. So I do have this memory of like being there as a kid and meeting people that like had worked with my grandfather and just getting to know him through them. They were incredibly successful, but they were incredibly like gentle, honest, fair, modest people, and really loved. And I think, so like as a kid to get to experience them through others was great, just really insightful, not an experience that one, often has. And I really appreciate growing up the way that I did and having this idea of hard work be really ingrained in me, and a passion for food and community, really. That was a big part of their business, was community and taking care of those around them.
Thank you, dear.
There you go.
Oh, check out these red potatoes. They are awesome.
Telling jokes. Come on, tell me a joke. Tell us one about your dog.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
My greatest breakthrough is being a husband again. That's why I chose UPMC.